About a year ago, almost exactly to the day, I had lunch with a friend of mine who had worked at a very high level in the Barack Obama's presidential campaign. Subsequently, after our dinner, he went into the White House, also at a very high level, and still serves there. Thinking back about that, however, one thing strikes me about this lunch in August of 2009, and it is this. We talked about many things. He mentioned about what a great surprise and a sort of dreamlike element the Obama success had been, and that Barack Obama was president. He was still stunned by it. He talked about going to the White House and trying to figure out how the presidency had grown to be what it was in a country that started out to be being critical of monarchy, and so on. And we talked about various issues of the day. But what we did not talk about were these kinds of town hall meetings that had proved so truculent, so difficult for members of Congress who had been, at that summer of 2009, had begun considering the health care bill. We didn't talk about what that might mean for the Barack Obama administration, whether it might be a threat to them. And looking back, it seems really striking. I didn't say to him, but aren't you guys worried about all these people, these angry people, showing up at town hall meetings and being very aggressive and confrontational with members of Congress? I think we both, in a sense, had a kind of inside the Beltway attitude. And the attitude was that, you know, there is this kind of issue out there and people are upset, but the economy's bad. This movement will go away. Well, it's been a year now since that dinner, since that lunch, and of course the movement hasn't gone away, and that's what we're here to talk about today. The town hall meetings morphed into a genuine, what might be called Tea Parties, Tea Party movements, and has now continued down to this day, and it is replete not only with anger and confrontation, but also with political candidates that might not otherwise be the candidates for the Senate. For example, Rand Paul in the state of Kentucky, who is a Tea Party favorite. Today, we're going to have several distinguished speakers talk about the Tea Party movement. I want to set the stage a little bit by talking about three things and some questions associated with. What is the movement? What does it have to do? How does it relate to campaigning? And ultimately, how it might relate to governing, which I think is the big issue. First issue of the movement itself. One of the questions that we don't know a lot or the answer to yet is the question of who exactly are the people that make up the Tea Party movements. What do they want? That's a question that has been posed, I think, and already talked about at this meeting in some respects. What they say they want, and what they've remained remarkably focused on, I think, is the idea that spending, debt, and deficits are a danger to the future of the United States. This is the focus, and therefore cutting spending, limiting government, and also, you hear often, a return to the Constitution, to what the Constitution means, in a sense that we are losing that. So is that really what they want and really what it will mean? One of the questions also that has been raised, not least by a New York Times survey, is despite the critical attitude toward the welfare state that's grown up since the New Deal, do these people in the Tea Party movement actually support many of the major planks, not least of all the entitlement parts of the New Deal state and afterwards? And will they therefore find that their views are in a sense contradictory, that they want to both cut government and yet support important parts of it? These things will be talked about, I think, as we go forward during campaigns. And then, of course, if Tea Party movements and the candidates and Republican candidates do as well as expected this fall, when time comes to govern, this will matter. Finally, another question about the movement is, will they persist? Several movements arise in American politics from time to time. The question is, do they persist over time? How do they affect the political system? And in this particular case, I think the question is, will they persist beyond November to make a difference in exactly what happens next year in Congress and in 2012 with the presidential election? On the questions of campaigning, as well as movement, what would the movement mean in terms of now congressional campaigns? Well, of course, one of the central questions is, can Tea Party candidates win? Can they actually get elected? Can Rand Paul win? Can Sharon Angle win? And so on. And if they do, how often will it be that the Tea Party is the crucial element to it? That is, we're in an era right now in which the political mood is such that it's going to be a wave election that will help Republicans enormously. To what extent will the Tea Party be responsible for these elections? Finally, on the question of governing, which in a way our topic here goes to, that is, the question is, the Tea Party seems to be against big government. To do something about that will mean to do it in terms of actually governing, having Congress, passing laws, getting things changed. And one way to do that, or perhaps the only way to do it, is through the organization of Congress in parties. And there's a fair amount of evidence that the Tea Party will be associated with Republican Party. The candidates that are important are Republican candidates to the Tea Party. And yet the question becomes, will the Congress, the GOP in Congress, or the GOP in Washington, change because of the Tea Party? Or will the GOP that we've seen in Washington for some years now, of the George W. Bush era, the party that did support substantial spending and increase in the size of government, will they change the Tea Party? This came down about 2 or 3 months ago in an unguarded or perhaps guarded moment. Former Majority Leader Trent Lott said of the Tea Party people, oh yeah, when we get them to Washington, we've got to co-opt them as quickly as possible, which was a remarkable statement, but indeed that is the question that comes down. And you'll see it in things like in the Kentucky Senate race, Rand Paul's working closely now with Minority Leader, perhaps Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. Will Rand Paul become more like Mitch McConnell, who's much more of a traditional Republican, or will he remain a kind of libertarian person who works very hard and brings about some changes in limiting government?